Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Network Television, where we keep you updated with the happenings from the front page of the Nigerian newspaper. Part of the story we will be looking at is the fact that the ECOWAS court have slammed the federal government, talking about the hashtag answers, and have asked them to pay 2 million naira compensation to some of the people who have been affected during the hashtag answer. So these and many other stories are what we will be looking at on the paper this morning. I am Sana Elisha Dasho. I'll be doing the program today with Lois Strikey. Good morning.
Morning, Sele. It always feels good to be on Dailies.
Yeah, of course. Once in a while, it's good to have you. Thank you so much.
You're
All right, our
welcome.
viewers, do remember you can drop your comment, your views on Facebook and on YouTube as well. And Lois will take us through the first paper for today, which is the Daily Independent newspaper.
The Daily Independent newspaper, the big story here says, NSAS protests. ECOWAS court slams FG, finds it guilty of rights violations. And we can remember the 2020 when NSAS happened because of the brutalization and all of that. And then Nigerians said they were tired of all of that police brutalization and, people will not even be guilty of some certain crimes, and then you see how they will be brutalized and treated badly. And then Nigerian, the youths especially, said, no, this has to stop. And then NSAS happened. And we can recall all the protests that took place during that period for a while. And then people were killed according to reports and all of that. And now ECOWAS court has slammed federal government and said, you have violated human rights during that protest, and then you are fined a certain amount and all of that. So it's really unfortunate that we have found ourselves in this particular situation, because human rights is something that you shouldn't take away from your people, because we are in a democratic dispensation. And so human rights is something that should be upheld and given the opportunity for your citizens to be able to air out their grievances and all of that. And they should be heard properly, not killing them or, doing certain things that even ECOWAS or even other countries can attest to it, that you have done something bad to your own people. I think it's rather unfortunate, but it's good that this is coming up, so that the federal government will not just see it as the court attacking them or something, but they should be able to take the right full steps in seeing that they do the needful.
Lois, looking at this, I don't know whether I'm having a mixed feeling. So in as much as I feel that it's too late, but then it's never late, as it is presently, just like you said, I'm happy it's coming from ECOWAS. And then it also happened that our own president has been re-elected as the chairman of ECOWAS. So I am expecting him to uphold justice and let the people who have been affected, even though we saw the few people, DJ Switch and many others, that were being violated and being maltreated during that protest, the federal government is meant to pay them 2 million naira compensation. But beyond that, Lois, how about we talk about the people who died? It was just last year, I clearly remember, where the governor of Lagos State said there should be a mass burial for some of the bodies. Have Lagos State government, because we know that happened in Lagos State, have they identified each of these families and say, okay, this is what we should do? More like a way of saying we're sorry for treating Nigerians in that way. Just like you said, it's in our constitution. It's a human right that when anything is not going well, you have the right to air out your view. You have the right to protest. It's constitutional. I clearly remember during the Democracy Day for this year, where Senator Shehu Sani was telling the president that he should not stop anybody from protesting, because he is the father for protest, if you're talking about protesting. But that is for them politicians. But I'm just hoping, just like we say, if ECOWAS is saying that, I hope that the federal government will actually listen and do the right thing by identifying the victims, going down to their level, and also apologizing. And yesterday, we're discussing where Senate is also afraid that there might be another protest, Lois, because of the hunger in the land. It's no longer news. And that even a blind man can see that there is hunger in the land. And I'm hoping that the federal government will listen to all of these advices coming from various bodies within and even outside the country, and they will do the right thing by actually identifying the needs of Nigerians presently and also going down to their level to do what is expected of them to do so that everybody can be happy eventually. I think that's the desire of every Nigerian
Even
presently.
if everybody, but the majority should be, because like you can't please everybody, but then the rightful things need to be done and be done fast so that
Honestly.
we will avoid such instances like the NSAS, because that thing really happened. It was a massive protest and the whole world was there supporting the youths of Nigerians that time, and it was sad how it turned out to be, because I think the aim
Was
it was
defeated, more
defeated
like.
somehow, although they still got what we still got what we wanted, but then it was kind of it didn't end well, and I just hope that our leaders will do right, because hardship is in the increase. We can see that petrol has gone up again, and then people are striving, are looking, they are struggling to survive each day. So we just hope that something will be done fast and quickly. Back to the paper, Daily Independent. Livestock Ministry won't stop headers to farmers' clashes. And the writer says MBF Northern Youth say it will swell cost of governance. We've started preparing our 2025 budget. This is coming from Governor Fubara of Rivers State, and he says Umahuile, 24 other seats were declared vacant December 13th. Hardship. Tinubu has closed doors to ministers, NAS members. This is coming from Indumai. If you're interested in the story, you can find it on page 29 of Daily Independent newspaper. PDP warns embattled lawmakers not to disrupt peace in Rivers, says charges IGP to check their subversive acts. On minimum wage, Tinubu meets labor leaders today. You can find more details on page 29. INEC confirms Adozie Njoku as APGA National Chair. Be Fair, Upright, CJN urges 21 inaugurated appeal court justices. You can find more details on page 6. Mara promotes 5,042 NDLEA offices, honors 15 commands and 70 personnel. Another big story here, still on Daily Independent newspaper, report on Samoa agreement. Federal government angry, says it was designed to cause confusion in the land. And the last story here says Tinubu swears in new set of permanent secretaries. If you're interested, you can find more details on page 6 of Daily Independent newspaper. And these are all the news stories you can find on Daily Independent newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. Reps canvasses 1% first line charge for TB and malaria control. More detail on page 6. Reps Makinde orders Mon Honorable Akiremi. You can find that as well in the paper. And on business, Unity Bank empowers 400 fresh graduates. And on Olympics, Oshoala arrives the South Falcon camp in Spain. You can find that in the paper as well. With current strategic measures, food prices will crash in 180 days, coming from the federal government, assures of high-quality grain importation. More detail found in the paper. Tinubu to meet NLC TUC leaders over minimum wage today. Ahead a do-undo polls, Ariwola warns against conflicting judgments, says Nigeria in perilous times over litigation, upsurge, and then swears in 22 appeal court justices, 12 in FCT High Court. Supreme Court to deliver judgment on local government autonomy today. You can find out on page 9. We will record that the federal government sue governors concerning local government autonomy. So today is when we will get to hear what the Supreme Court have to say concerning that. Gunmen kill 10 in Benue community. And we have US aid to inject 115 billion naira into Nigerian's power sector. NDLEA promotes 5,042 officers, confers 70 with special award. You can find more detail of that on page 18, and that's all in Blueprint newspaper.
Moving now to Vanguard. From the top, we have oil marketers shut stations in Lagos as panic buying continues. Hashtag NSAS protest. ECOWAS court finds FG guilty of rights violations. You can find details on page 4. On minimum wage, Tinubu meets organized labor today. An EFCC witness admits Emefiele's wife not beneficiary of Central Bank of Nigeria contracts. The big story here says will regulate price of imported foodstuffs. This is coming from federal government. And the writer says food prices to crush in 180 days. We can't see president advise him on food crisis. This is coming from Ndume. Lamets, even ministers cannot see him. Notes Nigerians like Sudanese dying of hunger. Insists children in Northwest malnourished. It's really sad. We're still talking about the hardship and then the prices of imported foodstuff that are still, are still expensive, even though they say they will regulate the prices and all of that. But when you go to the market, you still see that things are still on the high side and all of that. And then now, Ndume is lamenting that they can't even see the president to even advise him. Even ministers are lamenting that they can't even see him, and Nigerians are dying of hunger. And then the children in the Northwest are malnourished. I don't even think it's just the Northwest. Children around will be malnourished because the hunger is everywhere. It's not just in the Northwest. It's all over the country. And so, but I'm sure maybe the Northwest has a more heat compared to other parts of the country, other regions. So it's really sad that they can't get to see the president to advise him appropriately. I don't know why that is happening, but then I'm hoping that he will be able to open his doors for his ministers, his cabinet, to be able to come and put their heads together to see how these things can be regulated, how things can get better as time goes on. Because like we said earlier, it's becoming harder each and every other day. And so we just hope that the right thing is being done.
Just like when I was looking at the fact that they're given the presidency is given 180 days. Initially, a Monday or so, we saw in the paper that was 150 days import. The president remove and import duties. So that is to say, for those who be importing, there will be no tax applied to it. But right now, we're seeing that it's now 180 days. And just like you said, with all that is happening, I mean, the price of foodstuff is still very high. I mean, with the scarcity of fuel presently, just when we're about to see, okay, things are about to get a little bit better, tomatoes is going down a little, and then for those who are living in the North Central can actually testify to the fact that you can actually have access to maybe Irish and few other foodstuff. But right now, with the scarcity of food again, this is going to be another danger on another way.
Transporting it to exactly,
and then I think the reason why the Northwest is because of the insecurity at that end, and then we recall that NNPCL was complaining the fact that the weather as well is also affecting them transporting. So I could imagine that if you cannot transport fuel to that part of the country, that is to say that even food trucks will be stuck in that same region because of the weather. So I'm hoping if they can have access to the president, what can the Senate do presently to caution the effect? We've been talking about the fact that they're supposed to be palliative, but Nigerians have not seen the palliative. Even the fertilizer that's supposed to go to farmers, they're unable to have access to it. And then we know that it's the rainy season. Planting is supposed to go on so we can have food for, when the dry season comes in and all of that. By August, it's when you're supposed to, okay, there's food. But you and I would testify the fact that from the beginning of, from last quarter of last year down to this year, it seems a bit difficult for a number of Nigerians to survive. Let's not even talk about the fact that we're yet to even do our census. So I'll be able to know how many, our population, that will be able to help us and all of that. So we are hoping that all that is needed to do, especially if they can have access to the president, what can they do now before the ministers and the Senate can actually have access to the president?
Now, Sarah, talking about the fertilizers, I know of someone that said he was able to get but it was just like 3 mudu, and then he had to even pay like 1,000 naira to even get that 3 mudu. But then, at least he got something. He can still attest that he got something from the government, but we are expecting that better should be done. It's not, at least a bag should be, it's not even going to be enough considering maybe the hectare of land being cultivated. But then 3 mudus, I don't think it will even a backyard farm will not even be enough for it. But whichever way, we are just hoping for the better.
Okay.
Well, back to Vanguard newspaper. Conflicting court orders. CJN vows to deal with errant judges. And recent conflicting orders of courts of concurrent jurisdiction. And Kano Emirship tussle, a state high court and legal highs. It's not very clear. I'll just leave that. And on basic education, Nigeria needs 194,876 more teachers and 1,107,854 classrooms. This is coming from UBEC. And we have other stories on sports. We have Paris 2024. Ashola Onumonu arrives Super Falcons Sevilla camp. And these are all the news stories you can find on Vanguard newspaper.
Right, and on the Guardian newspaper, abuse violation of urban planning laws breed homelessness and slums. And we're seeing here, giving us some infograph here, saying that at an urban growth rate of over 4.3% yearly, Kano, Ibadan, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, Kaduna, Onitsha, and Benin City, among others, are projected to become bigger till 2030. And then here we have Enugu, Anambra, Lagos, Abuja, and Kano have witnessed property demolition worth 100 billion naira in the last 1.5 years. Nigeria witnesses about 604 building collapses between 1974 and May 30, 2024. Building collapse prevention guide data are the ones that are bringing this up, so you can do well to read more detail of that in the paper. Higher tariff worsen MDA's electricity backlog, threatening supply. This is on the business page, page 19. Hashtag NSAS ECOWAS court finds federal government guilty. Minister confirmed duty-free policy as federal government target crash in food prices. And here we have strange illness killed 12 in Gombe community. We hope that the Commission of Health, they will be able to verify what is that strange illness so that it doesn't spread to other communities and other states neighboring to Gombe State. 16 states failed to access 45.7 billion naira UPEC funds, talking about education at the basic level. And we have the CSO, others for Livestock Ministry as the NRC resumes cattle transport by rail. Supreme Court delivers judgment on local government autonomy today, and governors panic as Tinubu meets Labour over the minimum wage, as I believe everybody's fingers are crossed, hoping to see that the new minimum wage will be, verified and then will be announced very soon so that everybody will know what to do. You can find more detail of that on page 5, and that's all on Guardian newspaper.
Looking at leadership newspaper, from the top we have funding. Tinubu steps down memos on road projects. You can find more details on page 8. Federal government to crash food prices in 180 days. This is coming from the minister. And Dangote refinery will supply petrol in July. This is coming from one of the officials. And federal government releases 1.23 trillion naira to 17 ministries for projects. And we have 423 billion naira will meet in court, Assembly tells Aerofies aides. If you're so interested in this particular story, you can find it on page 9 of the leadership newspaper. The big story here says fresh tension in reps. 150 first-time members move against House leadership. And the writer says protest marginalization, exclusion, seek rejig of committees. It's a normal parliamentary process. This is coming from House spokesman. And Supreme Court rules on local government autonomy today. You can find more details on page 22. CJN raised Riot Act, new appeal court justices. And Rivers crisis, I want to represent 2024 budget for Barra vows. And the last story here says abuse of office, court adjourns Emefiele's trial to October 28th. If you're interested in the story, you can find more details on page 21.
All right, let's take a look at the Punch, starting with the big news on the paper. Federal government project massive food price crash January. New measures will address the high food costs, says Agriculture Minister. Imported food commodities will be subjected to recommended retail price coming from the federal government, more detailed on page 2. Top side of the paper, Labour to meet Tinubu in season 250,000 naira minimum wage. And non-local government funds, Supreme Court decide federal government sued against governors today. Reps panel squeezes minister alleges 1.5 billion naira diversion with receipt there was a breakdown what she used for sanitary part as well as order for a New Year party. So this has accumulated to 1.5 billion naira diversion. More detail found on page 14. Ex-Accountant General begs for time to reform looted funds. More detail can be found on page 28. And here we're seeing Tinubu swears in 8 permanent secretaries. We can see the picture of some of them taking in their oath of office. You can find that in the paper. Conflicting orders embarrassing, airing judges rig sanction coming from the Chief Justice of Nigeria. This man backs life jail for raping daughter in Lagos. That's on Human Angle. You can find on page 5. And we're seeing here 12 states allocation rise by 40% as FAC hits 4.5 trillion naira. Detail of that can be found on page 19, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
Moving to Nigerian Tribune, we have the big story here says NSAS ECOWAS court finds federal government guilty of rights violations. And from the top, Nigerian Tribune, journalist wins International Journalism Award. Odua Investment commends Advisory Council on defined project. Adeleke bags award as Oshun emerges first in NELF funds process. And moving down from the left side of the paper, we have NATS suspends plenary. Tinubu Makinde mourn as Oyo Reps member dies at 51. You can find more details on page 5. 45.7 billion naira BEC fund unaccessed by states. This is coming from UBEC. And PDP NWC suspends Dan Orbe. UBA's GMD appointed chairman body of bank CEOs. You can find more details on page 6. On food insecurity, Tinubu is trapped in the villa, Ndume alleges. Says president not aware of grim realities in the country. Federal government rolls out measures to crash food prices in 180 days. Alleged diversion of 1.5 billion naira, minister in shouting match with the reps committee. And on local government autonomy, Supreme Court delivers judgment. Today we have a picture story from the right. Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde, representative of Olubadan designate. We can see Oba Latif Badamosi Adebimpe and President Central Council of Ibadan Indigenous CCII and Ajoni Ajewole during the commissioning of new Olubadan's Palace at Ibadan on Wednesday. The new palace photos and other things, you can see them cutting the ribbons to commission the new palace. And these are all the news stories you can find on Nigerian Tribune.
Right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. History as Uribadan gets a new palace. FEC directs the SGF to implement varsity lecturers removal from IPPIS, because this is one of the reasons as well that Sanu and Nasu had the protest they had on Tuesday. More detail found in the paper. We have here 67,603 TB patients on treatment in Lagos, FCT, Oyo, and others. Chief Justice of Nigeria inaugurates Wike's wife, 21 others as appeal court justice. Chief Justice of Nigeria inaugurates Wike's wife, 21 others as appeal court justices. You can find that in the paper. Supreme Court to rule today on council autonomy. Reps didn't stop Samoa Pact. We will recall some of the papers had it yesterday that the House of Rep have said that the Samoa agreement should be on hold. But here we are having reps coming out to verify that they didn't stop that. So you can read more detail of what they actually did on page 30 of the Nation newspaper. Federal government kicks off food security emergency plan, with the writer here saying framework ready within 2 weeks. Rice farmers express worry. And we have other highlights of what is happening concerning that, which you can take a closer look at. Ex-Power Minister Mama faced 33 billion naira fraud charge. More detail found in the paper. In downside of the paper, more than 2 years after ex-Senate President Wyatt's body flown home from UK. You can read that on page 30, and that's all on the Nation newspaper.
Daily Hub newspaper. From the top, we have how Ighodalo stopped Edo Revenue Agency from harassing small business owners, says official. The big story here says Rivers crisis, 26 pro-Wike lawmakers gone forever. This coming from the governor of Rivers, Fubara. And the writer says their seats remain vacant. They are their own undoing. They'll go back home for defecting from PDP, the governor declares, says without them, my administration running Rivers smoothly. Mocks Wike, says the dance in the media, but cry behind. Edo Guba, PDP NWC suspends National Vice Chair Orbi, sets up 6-man investigation committee. Livestock Ministry settle members with grazing reserves. Mieti Allah urges governors. Zamfara APC crisis worsens as reps member creates own faction. Alleged fraud, Ganduje wife, 6 others to appear in court on Thursday. And 2027, nobody's too big to be voted out of office. This is coming from Erifai's son. Ayeda Tiwa present 25 hunters or to security agencies in Ondo. And Lagos needs 30,000 more medical doctors. This is coming from Health Commissioner. And it's really alarming, Celeb, still talking about the health sector and then the lack of sufficient medical personnel and all of that. And now we see that the health commissioner in Lagos is saying they need 30,000 more medical doctors. And then we see every day people are jackparing the jackpot syndrome and then leaving the country to other countries that will give them better opportunities. And we are still calling on the government to see how they can open better opportunities for doctors so that they and other health workers as well, because it's not just the doctors that are leaving the country. We see nurses even leaving and other health personnel leaving the country to see that they have better lives elsewhere, where they can have better opportunities, where they are offered better, salaries and all of that and allowances. And then we're hoping that we are still calling on the government to see how they can do the same in Nigeria so that these people will stop leaving, and even other, not just the health sector, even other people that are leaving the country to stop leaving, because we have better opportunities in our own country, so that we will see how we can be able to grow our country and make it better for other people too, to be able to leave their own country, come to Nigeria and make it grow as well.
Other nations are growing. Very true, Lois, because we might be having it here that it's Lagos that need 30,000 medical doctors, but believe you me, every hospital right now is in need of doctors. You can go to some of our teaching hospitals, you will realize that doctors are not even available. Consultants, totally, there's none. There was a time you could actually walk up to a teaching hospital and you find consultants, but right now, I don't know what the case is present. Just like you said, not only are doctors leaving, our nurses are leaving, our midwives are leaving, other professions are leaving as well. Reason why the environment is not conducive for them to work in. And just like you said, I mean, if you really want to woo these people back, you need to make the environment more conducive. We're seeing that multinationals are leaving, our pharmaceutical companies are leaving. And right now, people are even resolving to taking herbal drugs that have not been tested to know whether it will actually work on them or not. So things are really happening, and we see that the health sector is really crumbling down gradually. So if the government will not do something, I will recall earlier, I mean, the second quarter of this year was when we saw the president saying the fact that universities need to graduate more doctors. And I say, even after graduating more doctors, what
They
will
will
happen to
leave.
them? If they do not have a better working environment, they would definitely leave. It's one thing for it to, okay, you're going to pay them a better salary. How about the facility? We'll go to some of the hospitals and you realize that they have just one working generator. There was a time that, okay, right now it's scarcity of fuel or diesel. You hear that if you really want your loved one to be operated on, you need to buy the diesel yourself. You need to buy certain appliances or certain things that will be used on the patient. And that is not how things are supposed to be. So just like you rightly say, this is a call that the health sector really, really needs to be upgraded by our government. Maybe sometimes, Nigerians will say maybe it's because our leaders do not patronize or do not use this hospital, and that's why they have no idea. We saw one of the papers where Ndume is saying that the president is not aware of the hardship. Rachel, it's not true. Sorry, Lois. It's not true. I'm so used to Rachel. Sorry. So it's not true. So I'm hoping, honestly, you get so emotional sometimes when you see things like this, where you go to the hospital to patronize it and you realize that certain things are not available. So just like you rightly stated here, we need doctors, and we hope that our government are willing to, the doctors that we've graduated, let's hold them back here. If not, we'll still see them leaving again. You go to the airport and you realize that more doctors are leaving. So we hope that the Japa syndrome will not really get that bad that even our nurses, you not find one in the hospital.
We hope so. Back to the paper. Bayelsa police arrest 80-year-old man over alleged defilement of girl. That's really sad. And we hope that the right process will be done to be able to look at this issue thoroughly, because we saw that even yesterday the ICPC was lamenting the high rate of sexual harassment and all of that. So looking at an 80-year-old harassing a very little girl, it's really sad. We just hope that people will be mindful and morally sound in different ways, because I can't even imagine it, Sele.
It's a case of mental disorder because he's not normal. Lois, of course. If not, what explanation would you give for an 80-year-old man to desire a 10-year-old girl? You are mentally not stable. So this man, this grandfather needs to be taken to the hospital for checkup, and then he needs also, maybe we should tie him in a rehab to be checked on. But really, we can laugh about it right now, but it's really sad. I mean, yesterday as well, in one of the papers we saw where I think an 80-year-old child is missing. And you could really tell that why will a man steal such a child if not for such things? And we see this thing on an increase, and so we can actually say it's rituals, because some of these people get involved in such things. So just like you rightly say, it's really sad, and I hope that the ICPC will do something about the issue and the increase of sexual harassment that is going on in the country.
And it's not just for the girls. It can be anybody, like even the male sometimes get harassed and all of that. Even teachers, like they said, even teachers and students alike. So it's really important that these things are looked into, and people should really get into their minds. If you're mentally derailed, then the necessary things need to be done for you to get better or something, or stay away from people so that you will not harm them and also harm yourselves. Well, the last story here says, or rather, one of the second to the last story on Daily News Hub says, new minimum wage, Tinubu NLC 2UC meet today. And then the last story, I'll sack non-performing commissioners, Governor Diri vows.
All right, before we continue further with other people review, we would love to take a break and let you through the stories. Drop your comment on Facebook and YouTube regarding any of the story that is of interest to you. We're seeing that the organized labor will meet with the president today to possibly have a talk again on the new minimum wage, as we're seeing that Labour have refused to shift their ground. They are insisting on the 250,000 naira as well. We're seeing that ECOWAS have slammed the federal government for human rights violation, where they have been asked to pay compensation to victims that have been affected. So many other stories on the front page. We would love to hear from you when we come back from this break. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. It's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, and just like we said before we went on the break, you can actually air your own views concerning that. We've seen what ECOWAS court is saying concerning the hashtag NSAS human rights violation, where they have slammed the federal government for that, and as well we've seen the National Working Committee have suspended their vice chairman, and then hoping that there'll be probe concerning that and many other stories on the paper. I still have Lois with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Excuse me. All right, let's continue with the paper review and look at the New Telegraph newspaper. CBN SAC Mint management team appoint acting managing director. Naira devaluation, Nigerian bank dropping global ranking. You can find that on page 26. Tinubu orders review of inherited road projects and others. And on conflicting others, we have the NJC to deal with erring judges. More detail on page 2. Concerning hardship, Tinubu closed his door to ministers. NAS member in Dume saying that. And we have Obakuba to Tinubu implement 100 trillion naira Marshall Plan, 2 trillion naira insufficient. More detail about that found on page 7. And the big story, federal government lack of clear fiscal policy disturbing, coming from NACCIMA, says its reason some wealthy Nigerians shun bank, store dollars at home, as uncertainty distort investors' projection. And then here we have Supreme Court to deliver verdict on local government autonomy suit today. Why Tinubu established livestock ministry by the AGF. Call criminals by their names, IPOP tell Nigerian army. You can find that on page 28. Orosaye reports scrap merging of MTAD spell doom for pensioners, coming from the NUP. Here we have from the National Security Agency, insecurity threat to 2024 census. As we're seeing that the NPA, that's talking about the National Population Census, say they are ready, commission rather, say they are ready for census, but then they are waiting for approval coming from the president, as today it's been marked as a World Population Day. So you can find more detail of that on page 2. Also, we have a story down here that said 67,603 TB patients on treatment in 9 states. You can find more detail of that on page 29, and that's all in New Telegraph newspaper.
Moving to the metrics, from the top of the paper, we have Nigeria's crude oil production rises to 1.7 mbpd in June, says Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. On sports, we have Euro 2024 final, Spain, England to battle for continental glory. For sport lovers, you can find more details on page 16 of the Metrics newspaper. Federal government promises cheaper food items within 180 days, confirms suspension of taxes, import duties, VAT on importation of food commodities. Local government autonomy, states to no fate as Supreme Court delivers judgment today. You can find more details on page 3. Samoa agreement, reps backtrack, say we didn't kick against implementation of deal. You can find more details on page 3. Hashtag NSAS protests, that's the big story here. It says, at last, justice is served. ECOWAS court finds federal government guilty of rights violations. Orders FG to pay DJ Switch, 2 others 2 million naira compensation each. And Amnesty International hails ECOWAS court ruling on rights violation. On new minimum wage, Tinubu to meet organized labor today. You can find more details on page 9. And PDP suspends weakest ally over anti-party activities. Tinubu swears in 8 new permanent secretaries. Sanusi makes list. You can find more details on page 9. And there's a picture story on condolence visits. Vice President Kashim Shettima on a condolence visit to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite, over the death of her mother, Mrs. Victoria Immaculata Uzoka, and Senator Bala Ibn Naala on the death of his wife, Hajia Safia Naala, who passed away on Tuesday evening in Abuja. Such a sad incident, and we pray that the Lord consoles or condoles them. And the last story here says Toyin Abraham denies arresting ex-user's mother once again cyberbully. And these are all the news stories you can find on the Matrix newspaper.
On First News newspaper, Tinubu meets labor leaders today over new minimum wage. NNPCL seek $2 billion oil-backed loan amid financial strains. We have CNN plans to launch pay streaming service called 100 Jobs. Fubara declares 26 defected lawmakers are gone for good. And officially, federal government unveils bold 180-day plan to crash food prices. Suspend import duties, tax tariff on key food items, more detailed in the paper. Constitutional showdown, Supreme Court to rule on local government autonomy battle today. ECOWAS court declared Nigerian government guilty in #EndSARS protest case, orders 2 million naira compensation to each victim for right violation. Chief Justice of Nigeria vows action against judges issuing conflicting orders, swears in Wike's wife 25 orders as appeal court justice. Major problem is that Tinubu's government have shut its doors in Dume Bimon's hardship in Nigeria. You can find in the paper. And the picture story here is the 8 newly appointed permanent secretaries sworn in by President Bola in Abuja on Wednesday, which was yesterday. And that's all on First News newspaper.
Nigerian News Direct newspaper. The big story here says Lagos Abeokuta Expressway. Why we awarded projects without fake approval. This is coming from Dapo Abiodun. You can find details on page 3, and it says laments bureaucratic bottlenecks, alleges coordinated media attacks. From the top right issues, we will grow to 125 million customers, be among top 5 African banks. This is coming from CEO of Access Bank. You can find more details on page 9 of Nigerian News Direct. ECOWAS court finds federal government guilty of human rights abuses over #EndSARS protests. More details you can find on page 3. Bed spaces shortage. We will bridge the gap in 18 months. Lagos Health Commissioner. And then you said pledges 115.2 billion naira grant to federal government to support power reforms. Osun signs MOU with cooperatives body, disburses 300 million naira loan. You can find more details on page 2. Nigeria equity market drops 114 billion naira amid persistent bearish trend. If you're interested, you can find more details on page 9. These are all the news stories on Nigerian News Direct newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty, new minimum wage, Tinubu to meet with organized labor today. On hardship, Tinubu has shut his doors. Even some ministers can see him coming from Indume. Mass protests loom if food price keep rising, ex-Senate President Ahmed Lawan is saying. And we're seeing as well, we didn't call for suspension of Samoa Agreement implementation. House of Rep clarifies the House of Representatives has refuted report that it passed a resolution urging the federal government to suspend the implementation of the Samoa Partnership Agreement. More detail in the paper. NRC to begins movement of cattle by rail. And then on local government autonomy, Supreme Court to deliver landmark judgment today. and the allegation of the 423 billion naira probe. Prepare your defense, Kaduna Assembly tells El-Rufai's aide. Downside of the paper, and the last story on the paper is on 2027. Nobody is too big to be voted out. El-Rufai's son sent cryptic warning to Tinubu, says the IMF World Bank won't save him. And I think he's saying this regarding the policies of the president. So you can read more detail of every other story in the paper, and that's all on Voice of Liberty.
On sports, especially for sports lovers, from the top we have Echegini can't wait to get started at PSG. Ndidi rejects a Villa contract. Keen on EPL stay. Osimhen market value drops to 100 million euros. It's Spain versus England final. And Cagliari want dresses. Ten Hag targets EPL title. De Bruyne Anderson to remain at City. NFF in search of beach soccer coach. From down part of the paper, we have NPFL clubs no CAF foes today. Djokovic, Rybakina through to Wimbledon semis. Aku pleased with wrestlers outing in Spain. The big story here says worst best. We can see a picture story of Nigerian players celebrating there, and we have a writer that says how Nigeria fared at Olympic Games since 1952. And if you're so interested in all the stories, you can check them on more details on Punch Sports Extra.
Right, let's run it up with the Business Day newspaper. Farmers' security costs piles pressure on food prices. Federal government conclude plan for food import. Nigeria ranked 5th on cost of living index. More detail in the paper. Nigerian sports states pour billions in airport with few passengers. And the CBN Governor Cardoso Sanwo-Olu Kuku to speak at the Business Day CEO Forum today. Emefiele wife, not owners of firm, awarded CBN contract. This is coming from the weakness. And downside here we have oil for cash brain enslaves Nigerian next generation. More detail of that found in the paper, and that's all on Business Day and also how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Lloyd, for doing this with me.
Thank you, Sally, for having me.
And as well, thank you to our viewers, our supporters, and every other member of the crew that make this program a success. We look forward again to doing this tomorrow. To have a lovely day ahead.